Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you my process for creating this cool Chinese takeout 3D model using Autodesk Maya and Substance Painter. So in this video I'll be walking through how I created the noodles using a mesh network in Autodesk Maya. So of course the first step is creating the container for our noodles. I chose this Chinese takeout container for no particular reason. I just had Chinese leftovers the other day. I have the container sitting here in front of me, and I thought it'd be something good to practice modeling. Like all of my other videos, I'm going to let this time-lapse play of creating this Chinese takeout container, and I will hop right back into it once we finish so we can talk about creating the noodles with the mesh network. Alright, so I finished modeling the Chinese takeout container. I actually decided to model this in two parts. If you take a look at an actual Chinese container in real life, you'll notice that it's actually only one part folded in the appropriate places. I modeled this in two parts because one, it made it easier to UV unwrap, and secondly, I was able to have cleaner topology with two parts rather than one. We are going to create a sphere. This sphere is going to operate essentially as the volume of our noodles. So how deep down in the container the noodles are going to go and how wide amongst that container the noodles are going to be. Now you'll notice after we scale this sphere out that it is poking out the sides of our container. That's completely okay. We're actually going to adjust the noodles themselves once we have them modeled. This sphere is essentially just acting as the shape of the volume of the noodles for inside of our shape. We're also going to want to increase the subdivisions on this sphere. This is going to help our mesh network when we get ready to snap the noodles to the sphere. The more vertices and edges that we have on our shape, the better it is for the distribution of our noodles when we're creating our mesh network. Now I'm going to create our first noodle by using a curve tool. We can find the curve tool by going to create curve tools, CV curve tool up here at the top. I'm going to switch over to the top view, turn on our wireframe mode. I'm just going to create this very organic loose noodle. You do not want to create a noodle that is perfectly circular because I really don't know what noodle is. So let's just make sure that we're keeping this very loose and organic. And then we're going to move it to the top of our sphere. Now we can kind of hide our sphere because we don't need it as of yet. And then I'm actually going to move around some of these points on our curve so it can fit within the container. After doing that, I'm going to want to go ahead and create a mesh out of this curve. In order to do that, we're going to go right up to the top. We're going to create sweep mesh. Now over on the right hand side in attribute editor, we can just decrease the scale and increase the precision of our noodle. So yeah, this looks pretty good. Now that we have our noodle created, I am actually going to adjust these points a tad bit more. I see that there are some intersecting parts on our noodle and we don't really want that. So I'm just going to go ahead and manipulate these vertices so that we can remove these intersecting areas. With that done, I'm just going to delete history and freeze transform so I can delete out that curve with no problem. And then the next thing that we're going to need to do is actually close out those open ends. So in order to do that, we can just select the edges by double clicking on those edges. Then we're going to go to the fill hole option, select both of those faces, go up here to edit mesh and poke. This is going to turn those end faces into triangles, closing up that open face. Alright, so now we are all finished adjusting this noodle, and I'm going to go up to the Mesh tab and select this little red symbol here in the left hand corner to create that mesh network. So first things first, we're going to go to the Mesh Distribute tab, and I'm going to change the number of points to 100. Next, I'm going to go to Distribution Type Mesh, and I'm going to drag in that sphere we were going to use as the volume of our noodle into the input mesh field. Now you see our noodles kind of surround that sphere. I'm going to change the method to component selection set. I'm going to hide that sphere one more time just so we can see the noodle underneath it. And you'll see that one noodle. So the next thing to do is to go to the Mesh 1 tab, going to go to random and add random node. Now you'll see that those 100 noodles that we created have been duplicated, or actually randomized along that volume. And I'm just going to kind of give it some variation using the attributes within the random tab. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the repro tab, or not the repro tab, excuse me, the distribute tab, and I'm going to change my number of points to 50 because I actually want to duplicate this. So it'll still be 100 points after I add the replicate node. So now we'll see that the replicate node has been added. I'm just going to switch this to 1 so we can have one replication. Going to change the offset rotation Z because I actually don't want that, and then I'm just gonna adjust the rotation on this replicated node to give the overall noodle mesh some variation. Okay, this doesn't look half bad. I do want it to be a bit more dense, so I'm going to go back to my distribute tab and switch this back to 100. It will, increase the size of your overall project, but I just want it to look a little bit more dense within that noodle mesh. Alright, so our mesh for our noodle is looking good. Again, I'm going to delete history and freeze transform so I can delete out that connected mesh. I'm also going to delete out the sphere that we used for the overall volume of the noodle, and then I'm just going to save my project. So let's make sure that we're saving incrementally because this process is very heavy on Maya, and Maya does like to crash. So if I have not mentioned to save by now, let's make sure that we're saving. Okay, so now I'm just going to adjust the overall shape of our noodle mesh just a tad bit to get it within this container a little better. And then we're going to use the sculpting tool, the pull vertex sculpting brush, to actually pull some of these noodles back into the container. So this is going to take a little bit, so I'm just going to let the video play as I go ahead and pull these noodles back into the container. During this process of pulling the noodles into the container, I also took the time to pull some of these noodles down and around within the container, again, just to kind of work with the variation and to make it look like there's some gravity to the noodles within the container. And that pretty much closes out the process for creating noodles with the mesh network in Autodesk Maya. Now I'm just going to get the scene ready for render. I created an additional container that was closed just to kind of add to the overall scene. And then I went ahead and created some soy sauce packets. I used the in-claw simulation for that, so if you actually want to see me recreate that in real time or slow it down, just let me know in the comments below. I created some chopsticks and then just created like this makeshift table underneath to go with the overall scene. Thanks for watching, and I'm just going to let the video continue to play through the texturing and final render.